Welcome to the Cheering the Logo podcast. Today it's trade deadline day. We will be covering over the trade deadline, which comes in about half an hour. And we have a few trades to talk about with the Montreal Canadiens. Brett Kulak has been traded. We have Arturi Lehkonen, who's been traded, and there might be more. So stay tuned and we'll get right to that. Good afternoon, Habs fans. This is JD Lagrange coming live for the first time. I mean, we tried to do that the last time and I forgot to hit the live button. So hopefully everything works on YouTube, on Twitter, and on our Facebook page. I'm joined today by one of our staff writers, actually, for cheeringthelogo.ca, Mr. Bob Trask. Bob, how are you on this fine trade deadline day?
I'm doing pretty well, JD. Thanks very much.
Well, thank you for joining me. It's the first time that even you and I talk in person. I mean, we've been chatting a lot online, but never really in person. So it's a nice introduction, I should say, and a good timing too.
Yeah, it is very nice. Yeah, and thanks for having me on, JD.
We have some stuff to talk about. I mean, there was one trade, two trades, I should say. There was a Tyler Toffoli trade that happened a few weeks ago. And now Ben Chiarot was traded just a few days ago also to the Florida Panthers with a pretty good return, let's say. But today, two more deals dropped off the table for the Canadiens. And two guys who are maybe not key drivers for the Canadiens, but that are quite important anyway. And the first trade that happened actually was the one of Brett Kulak, who was traded to the Edmonton Oilers for 26-year-old defenseman William Lagesson, who played with Lucas Vertemo in Sweden actually in 2017, 2018. So, and a second round pick also that came to Montreal. So what do you make of this trade, Bob?
Well, first and foremost, I think Montreal had to make a decision on Kulak because he was a pending UFA, and I didn't see any room in the cap to sign him to anything more than he was making now, because he was going to be probably slotted in as the third D on the left side at best. So he was an asset they had to move, in my opinion, even though his play had improved significantly under Marty St. Louis. And, I really think Hughes did a great job in getting the return he did for Kulak. Many people were thinking, a third or a fourth round pick at best. He got maybe a number 6-7 D-man in return, plus a second round pick. I can't see much to argue about there.
Yeah, and that's a little bit more actually than perhaps what we were expecting. A second round pick is probably what I thought maybe he would bring. In normal time, perhaps even I was thinking even a third round pick would have been reasonable for a guy like Brett Kulak. But the market these days have been, I don't know what's going on this year, but well, I shouldn't say I don't know what's going on. I have a theory, and I want to know what you think of this theory. I mean, it's been 2 years that the NHL has been struggling with revenue, and the money that teams make in the playoffs, they make about $4 million a game, roughly on average per home game, because they don't pay the players, right? And so for owners who have been chomping at the bit for 2 years now due to COVID, with games being canceled, the seasons being shortened, that revenue is quite important. So I'm thinking that there might be some GMs out there who are getting pressure from the ownership to do something. And it is for that reason a seller's market. What do you think of that?
It's something I hadn't really thought of that much, but now that you bring it up, it's a really important point. And like you said, the COVID situation has cut down revenues drastically, and some of these guys, they need to get their balance sheets back in order. So it's
Yeah,
it all adds to the equation.
in Montreal, I mean, we're used to having a team, or Toronto, New York, the big markets. We're used to having teams that spend, but we forget that these guys, they're not billionaires for throwing money out the window. They're billionaires for making sound business decisions, and they're in the business to make money. So when you see teams, and some of those teams, we're talking about the top markets here, they have a cushion that they can rely on, right? They have other investments and so on. But you have owners in markets that are not perhaps as popular, or as big draws, I should say, non-traditional markets, where the revenue that they get from games is crucial.
Well, and I think Florida would be a prime example of that. They've never been, in the top half as far as attendance goes, and to pay those salaries and to leave a little left over for the owners, they need to get into the playoffs and go as deep as they can. And I think that's why Sherrod, part of the reason that Sherrod got such a good return is their desire to extend their season as long as possible.
Absolutely, and we'll get to the Panthers and Sherrod, because the Panthers have been perhaps the busiest team for this trade deadline. Anyway, I think it sounds like they're going for it. Basically, Legason, not we don't know him much. What he is, you mentioned, he's a sixth, seventh defenseman on the team. He's a borderline between American League and National Hockey League. The thing though is, the Canadians, by trading Kulak, with the injuries that they have right now, they're in need of bodies. They need some warm bodies. We've heard today, I was reading that David Savard, who was projected to come back this week at some point, will be in the lineup tonight because of the Kulak trade. So he's rushing his comeback a little bit quicker than anticipated. Because of that, they just don't have enough bodies out there. Legerson is 6'2", 207 pounds. He's a physical defenseman. He's a decent puck mover, and he has a pretty heavy shot. He's not one that you should rely on for the power play, but he can do that. He has 6.3 hits per 60 minutes, which is for the Oilers was similar to Darnell Nurse as far as physicality. So that's saying quite a bit. And the Habs equivalent for that hits-wise would be David Savard, who we just talked about. So the guy can eat up some minutes on the third pair. He will be helpful due to the lack of bodies, while Cale Clagg is getting better, while the Canadians are getting a little bit healthier, because even I think the only healthy body that they can rely on right now from Laval is Ouellette, right? Xavier Ouellette. So right now, the other thing that I was reading about him is that he needs to play 18 more games this season in order to retain his restricted free agent status. That's coming from Cap Friendly. If he doesn't play those 18 games for the Habs, he will become a Group 6 UFA this summer. So it will be interesting to see 18 games. The Canadians have 20 games remaining, so he'd have to skip a maximum of 2 in order for the Canadians to retain his rights. So I don't know what the future holds with this guy.
He's an interesting guy. I watched him play a couple of times, one game against Montreal, and I didn't appreciate the way he roughed up the Montreal forwards from time to time. So, so that's good news. Depending on how he develops, I could see him as a solid number 6 or 7 defenseman on an NHL team. The fact that he's an RFA, and you put out the disclaimer on that with 18 more games, but it means if the Canadians do play 18 more games, they kind of control that asset, whereas they didn't control Kulak's future at all. So just in that respect, it was a gain for the Canadians somewhat, and the second round. You combine those two, and it's a pretty nice return for Lagesson.
Yeah, it is. It is a nice return. I mean, I think
Lagesson.
it was more. Yeah, I think it was more of a throw in this case, right? To make it work for cap reason, his cap hit is $750,000. So I think that they needed to take a contract back to help the Oilers on that aspect. There were talks that Jake Allen might have been involved also in some in that trade, and that some people speculated that it was the possibility actually for the delay in the announcement, because it took about an hour to make it official. We have to say, though, that every NHL team has to send by fax. So we're old school in the NHL. They have to send their trades by fax, and they need to be approved by the NHL. There have been a lot of deals happening. So there's always a delay, and by the time we're just 18 minutes away from trade deadline right now. By the time 3 p.m. hits, there will be other trades that will start trickling in for sometimes an hour after. So until the teams come out and say we're done, we never know. So second trade happened today as well. Perhaps I would say it is a bigger trade. And that has to do with Arturi Lehkonen, who has been traded from the Canadiens, 50% of his salary retained, and he's heading to Colorado. The Canadiens got an amazing return as far as I'm concerned. They got a young 20-year-old right-handed defenseman, huge need for the Canadiens, Justin Barron, and they also got a second-round pick in 2024. So that is pretty spectacular return. I wanted to keep Lehkonen. I love the guy, but unless a team would overpay, I was saying, you keep that guy. I think there has been an overpayment. What do you think?
I think the Habs got a great return for Lehkonen, and like you, I love the guy. I hope he has all the success in the world. I'm kind of conflicted now. I got Foley, Lehkonen, and Sherratt to cheer for in the playoffs. But one thing that seems to be a common theme in Kent Hughes trades is he gets a prospect that is close to playing in the NHL within a year or two, in addition to a prospect. And again, maybe Barron doesn't make it next year at the Habs. Maybe it's 2 years from now, but he's close. He's put up some pretty decent numbers in the AHL this year, and Hughes is doing exactly what he said he was going to do. He's said he wants draft picks, but he also wants guys that are a lot closer to being ready to play. And he hasn't deviated from that. And the Barron and a second from Colorado, like you said, it fills a need. The defense on the right side was really thin in the prospect in the organization. And again, a second round pick. It's fantastic as far as I'm concerned.
It is an amazing return, and I think the league is shaking their heads right now about the type of the price, the asking price, and the price that teams are willing to pay in order to get some help. I mean, Lehkonen is a middle six forward, very versatile. Obviously, he's sound defensively, can kill penalties for you. He's physical. He's proven in the playoffs to be a playoffs performer as well. He's the type. I remember Marc Bergevin kept saying that. We got a break here. The Canadiens have traded goaltender Andrew Hammond to the New Jersey Devils in exchange for Nate Schnarr. SCHNARR.
Okay.
So we're going to have to research that guy because I have no idea who that is. So that's the beauty of live broadcast. So yeah, to finish on Lekanen here, he's a very versatile player. He's an experienced player. He can play up and down your lineup. He can, and he's a very well liked player as well. I will share as you tell us a little bit about what you think of Lekanen himself. I will share a quote from Joel Edmondson from today of what he had to say about about his former teammate. Actually, at the time that he made that comment, Lekanen hadn't been traded yet. But what he's saying is he's a guy that everyone loves on the team, smart guy off the ice. But I think his game shows how smart he is on the ice. He can play up and down the lineup. He can play first line, putting up the points. Or he can play fourth line and only penalty kill. He's a utility player, a Swiss Army knife. I love that. He was a big part of our run last year, and I think his game the past month, he's really stepped up and showed what he's capable of doing. He's been a big part of our team. This is Joel Edmondson on his former teammate. So,
Yeah,
if you, yeah, what do you think? What do you think of Lekanen? Does it hurt to lose him, for as far as you're concerned?
it does, but I think in Lekanen's case, I'm always of the opinion that you can teach defense. You can teach a forward to play defense, and you can't teach him to score goals. And a guy like Rem Pitlick, for example, uh, he has a lot of the same attributes as Lekanen, and it seems like he's learning to play a better two-way game under Marty St. Louis. I don't see him at center in the long term for Montreal. He's filling in well there now, but at some point you can only have so many third and fourth line players on your roster, and Montreal are filled with them. So uh, I think this gives them an opportunity to acquire a top four right D or a third line left winger. I don't see anything wrong with it.
Yeah, I wrote about him earlier. Well, I wrote about him last month, but I wrote about him also this week because there were obviously tons of rumors surrounding Lekanen. The guy was said to be the Blake Coleman or the Barclay Goodrow of this year, and we know that both those guys they brought in a top prospect, and a first rounder. So having a later second rounder, but having a top prospect, because let's face it, Baron, here we're talking about a young right-handed defenseman, 6'2", 195 pounds. The guy can skate like the wind. He moves well, passes the puck well. He was picked 25th overall in 2020. He was the Halifax Moosehead in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League. He was their captain in 2021. He represented Team Canada at the World Junior Championship, and this year he has 20 points in 43 games in the American Hockey League in his first season as a defenseman. So, I mean, the guy is half a point per game already in the AHL at 20 years old. So I think, and the need you talked about that, and it's funny because that was yesterday's article for me on cheeringthelogo.ca. The need for right-handed defensemen. The only quality that they have, and he's going to be ready down the line. He's only 18 years old. Is Logan Mailloux. So they did need that. Josh Brooks, with his injury, we don't know what's going to happen. He's been slowed down in his development by that. And the other ones, I mean, are a few years away, if any. So I think by covering that need, it's an excellent return.
Yeah, well, I agree 100%. I'm just switching it up a little bit. I just pulled up Nate Schnarr on Elite Prospects. I don't know if you've done that yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's looks like a big right-handed centerman, and he's having a decent year in the American Hockey League. I guess just a depth guy for the organization. They do need centermen. The organization is not deep at center, especially bigger centers. Ryan Taylor is really one of the few big centers that the team has in the organization right now.
Yeah, and he's going to be going straight to Laval, my understanding. So unless more trades happen here and we need bodies in Montreal, I think that is they're planning on sending him straight to Laval.
And again, Hughes was very upfront about that. He said he was going to try to help Laval and give them a chance to make the playoffs. So uh, this guy is he looks at the big picture, and I'm really, really pleasantly surprised at how well he's doing so far with his role as the general manager.
And it goes along the lines also of what you were saying. If you think about it, Andrew Hammond, they got him for peanuts. They got him for nothing, and then they pick up that guy, a 23-year-old center for him. That starts to resemble a little bit of what Bergevin did with. I remember when he signed Ilya Kovalchuk for nothing and then turned him into Jake Allen. So, if Hughes has any flair, if I always said, if he has half the qualities that Bergevin had for trades, the Canadians will be in good shape, because I believe he might be a better manager overall. Although I did like Bergevin, he could be a better general manager overall when coming with his concept and development, and with the help of Jeff Gorton with him. I think that the direction of the team is taken right now is very, very positive.
Just comparing Bergevin to Hughes, and I really liked, like you, a lot of the trades that Bergevin made. Where I see Hughes being a little more astute is in cap management. I think that sometimes Bergevin uh, panicked, if you want to call it that, paid too much, or he tried to be too. I don't even know what the word is, but I mean, he was kind of inflexible when it came to some of the younger guys, and as a result, you may have lost a couple of assets because of that. So I think Hughes' experience as a
He
player.
had his core. I think Bergevin had his core,
Mhm.
and I think he was very. And you could tell. I mean, he was attached to some of his core. We've seen him in interviews with about Carey Price, when Carey Price went on his leave with the NHLPA substance abuse, right? And then we saw him talk about Brendan Gallagher when he signed his contract extension. Jeff Petrie, the guy was very close to some of his players, his core, the people that he considered to be the core of what he was building, and it's good, because players respect that and appreciate that. But what it creates is it seems to be creating a vacuum effect when Bergevin was left like a lame duck by Jeff Molson without a contract for next season. It felt like the players also were affected by it. And so when you're that close to your group, to your players, um, he was well liked. Bergevin was well liked because he was a straight shooter. Let's face it. He may not have been a straight shooter um, with the media, okay, and that's where the media was bashing him a lot, and we think of the Gazette in particular. But he wasn't afraid of putting them back in their place. But the players did appreciate the fact that Bergevin would go to bat for them, and that he would support them in what they were doing.
One thing Bergevin never did was he never ever threw a player under the bus. He
No.
he, he was always talked in high regard. All of his current players are players that he traded. He was very respectful in that way. Unlike a lot of GMs who uh, don't hesitate to make their criticisms public.
That's true. Anne DeBlois, who's following us here, says, "You mean the uncertainty over Bergevin affected the player?" Yes, absolutely. That's what I mean. Um, you know, these guys signed, especially a lot of the free agents came in and signed under Bergevin. They signed because they liked the direction the team was taking with Bergevin there, and Bergevin is the one who talked to them and convinced them to come and sign with Montreal. So in 10 years being there, or 9.5 years that he's been there, obviously he's established some relationships with a lot of players, not only of the Canadians, but around the league. The network gets bigger and bigger. So definitely when you see that your GM is left like a lame duck without a contract for the following year with no commitment towards him, then that a management change would bring in potentially a change in players like we're seeing right now. Therefore, for a player, it's also instability for the organization, but for the player, his family, and so on, when he's committed to 3 or 4 years to play in Montreal with Bergevin, it does bring uncertainty, and it can certainly affect the mindset and even the play of some players.
Yep, I would have to agree completely. Bergevin was really close to a lot of these guys. I mean, the trio of Weber, Petrie, and Price seemed to be very, very tight. And as everything unfolded, Petrie just felt like he was maybe he felt like he was kind of out there on an island by himself, and it obviously affected his play. Have to agree with that 100%, JD.
So I'm just reading right now as you're saying that, Bob. Kevin Weeks, breaking news. The Hurricanes are going to sign Kotkaniemi to an 8-year extension. There's no talk about money yet. It's suspected that it would be between $4.5 and $5 million a season. But it sounds like they couldn't sign him prior to trade deadline. But it sounds like they will be announcing an 8-year extension with Jesperi Kotkaniemi. So good for him, I say.
You like stirring the pot, don't you, JD?
No, but I mean, I'm checking the Twitter feed because let's face it, we're 3 minutes away from trade deadline officially, and so I'm keeping an eye on my Twitter feed as we're talking. There's been trades happening around the league. Okay, let's not. We're not covering everything that's happening. We don't have the technology, the staff, or the capability of keeping you up to date with everything that's happening right now. Around the league, we try to focus as much as possible just on the Canadians. There's plenty to talk about when it comes to that. But the Kotkaniemi having strong ties, obviously, and it's a sensitive topic sometimes with some. Personally, I don't find that it is. I wish the guy all the best, and he picked the money to go where he wanted to go, and he did. And it's part of the rules. Okay, it's he didn't do anything illegal, and so he signed at 6.1 million. So good for him. I mean, I'm glad that we didn't go and sign him for that amount of money, and we move on, and we have a first-round pick for it, and we have a third-round pick for it, and we'll see where that goes in the long term, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to just switch back to Justin Barron for a second.
Yeah.
Can I read you a quote from Grant McCagg? Yeah. So Barron, the first time I saw him, he blew me away. A natural skater, smooth and effortless, had an injury in his draft year and struggled a bit. Otherwise, he was a top 15 candidate. So he went 25.
Wow.
When I see smooth, effortless skater, and a top 15 candidate, it just makes that trade seem even that much better for me. And, Grant he's been pretty good with his scouting reports on some of these.
Yeah, for those who don't know him, Grant McCagg was a former scout. He worked for the Canadians for a couple of years, and he still does that on recruit.ca. He does his scouting report every year, and it's quite followed. Actually, he's got some pretty good takes or very good. He's still friends with a lot of scouts, and he feeds on their takes as well when he talks about players like that. So when it comes to prospects, he's a pretty good source for sure. I want to go to a past trade. It's now, by the way, the trade deadline has come and passed. So there will be deals, as we talked about, that will be trickling as we speak. It sounds like Jacob Chikrin is staying put. The Coyotes will revisit in the summer, according to Pierre LeBrun. So, and there's others as well who probably will stay put. We're talking about Jeff Petrie, who is probably easier to trade actually in the summer when more teams have room under the cap. However, Petrie could be traded, or any of those players actually could be traded after trade deadline. The rule in the NHL is those players traded after trade deadline just cannot participate in playoffs. But if it's teams outside of playoffs that are getting those players, it's no big deal. So they can still trade. You don't see it as often. But in a case like Petrie, where it's family related, let's say a team like Detroit was one of the destinations. Detroit now having stacked up on picks and getting rid of some salary already, like Nick Leddy being gone and so on, they may decide now to trade for a guy like Petrie, who's from Michigan. And so that could happen at any time because neither team will be making the playoffs, right? So go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, a lot of people are talking about Petrie's contract being a hurdle. And what is he now? Is he 34 now?
He's 34, yeah.
34, yeah. But when you look at some of the contracts being handed out to defensemen these days, a lot of these guys are making a lot more money than Petrie well after their 34th birthday, and haven't put up any better numbers than he has. So I can see why Hughes is reluctant just to give him away for nothing. I think somebody's going to see some value in Jeff Petrie, and I fully expect that come September, we won't see him in the Montreal lineup anymore.
Well, especially, I mean, you look and I published it this morning. I wrote it yesterday afternoon, but Hampus Lindholm, who has just signed an extension with the Boston Bruins after being traded at $6.5 million. He's younger, but by the time he signed an 8-year deal, Petrie didn't sign for that long. I think their contract expires about a year difference, and statistically wise, Petrie is well ahead of Lindholm in the last 3 years. And this year it's comparable in spite of the fact that Petrie has had a horrible season, one of his worst seasons actually. I wish the guy to be moved because honestly, it's not good for the Canadians and it's not good for the guy either. It's time to help him out, get him with his family. Martin Saint-Louis this week said, listen, I can empathize with him because I would find it very difficult also being away from my kids and my family for this long, right? So they're trying to accommodate him, but I'm 100% behind Hughes here by not wanting to give him up. If you see what Lindholm signed for, there's obviously a market for that type of defenseman at that price. I think that he can find a home for sure for Jeff Petrie.
Yeah.
I was heading towards another trade. I want to talk about it a little bit. The trade of Ben Chiarot. I mean, this is very major when you think of it for the Canadians. So the Canadians basically got Thais Smilanic. They got a first-round pick and a fourth-round pick for Ben Chiarot. So 3 assets, and 3 assets for a pending UFA defenseman in Ben Chiarot. So that's pretty spectacular as a return too.
It is spectacular, and one of the things that Montreal had to be mindful of when they're making trades is they didn't have a lot of room to take on additional NHL contracts, and they didn't add any in this trade. Smilanic hasn't been signed yet, and of course the 2 draft picks haven't been signed yet. So it opened up some contract room for them to maybe this summer pursue a free agent or 2. People always talk about cap space. They very rarely talk about contract space. So that's something to keep in mind. And it's a haul for a guy that only had 20 games or 25 games left with Montreal.
Yeah, I agree. Listen, I want to take some comments here. Our good friend, a good friend of ours, a good friend of Cheering the Logo, Jean Sévigny is online watching us, and this is what Jean has to say in regards to um, the the trades that have happened. Jean says that tons of good comments about Barron by several experts. This may be the highlight return for the Habs. Solid, mobile, humble are amongst the main qualities. Second best prospect, right behind Goulet. And even Jean, I mean, I would dare say that it could even be ahead of uh, or we still have Mayu, who's still up there. Actually, probably to me, he was tied with Goulet up there. He's younger, though, 2 years younger, or a year and a bit younger. So yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a great acquisition. Fans should be very excited by Barron. A lot of Avalanche fans are not happy with this trade. They feel like the Avalanche have given way too much for him. So I fully agree, Jean. I mean, it's a great pickup.
Yeah, and there's some comments from the general manager in junior hockey, Cam Russell, who was a former NHL defenseman himself, and he raved that Barron is a first-class person, a world-class skater, and should be a top-four shutdown and a good puck mover. I mean, that's every quality that Kent Hughes was looking for in a player, and he picked that up. So I think the Habs did their due diligence on this guy, and boy, I'm interested in seeing what some of the team prospect rankings look like come this summer, because boy, that pipeline is getting stuffed full.
Yeah, it is getting stuck, and that's the thing, though. I mean, there's going to be some big decisions needing to be made here, because you can only have 50 contracts signed. So I think there's going to be some tough decisions. You'll see some players who will make the NHL that the Canadians won't be able to sign and won't be able to trade for. You'll see some. The good news is when you draft that many. I mean, the Canadians under Bergevin drafted 45 players in the last 3 or 4 years. So since 2017, I believe, the summer of 2017, well, they had a dozen before today, so they have even more now for this upcoming draft. So at some point, you have to sign those players. We're talking about Jordan Harris, who should be signed. I don't know about you, but I would guess probably 90% that he'll sign with Montreal. So they have guys that they need to sign, so they need to free up some contracts.
Exactly, and you can actually probably foresee some of those mid-tier prospects that Montreal have. I could see them being involved in some minor trades over the summer. Don't expect much in return because they don't have room to re-sign them anyway as far as contract space goes. Oh, I
So
see you popped up. I see
you
you
see what
popped
I've
up.
just posted?
I didn't
Don
see that.
Waddell, president and general manager of the National Hockey League's Carolina Hurricanes, today announced that the team has signed forward Jesperi Kotkaniemi to an 8-year contract extension. The deal will pay Kotkaniemi an average annual value of $4.82 million per season through 2029-30. So there you have it. Kotkaniemi, 8 years at $4.82 million. That's the scoop on that. So over 9 years, you add the 6.1 million. That gives you an average of about $5 million a year for 9 years. So if you were to do the math here,
Yeah, they got to be hoping that Kotkaniemi continues to develop, because the last half of the year he's really kind of stalled out as far as I'm concerned. Uh, I don't know if I'd want to be tied into that contract, given his current production.
mm-hmm.
I know they're probably going to lose Vincent Trocheck next year to free agency, because they have to sign Nash Cash and they just signed Kotkaniemi. Uh, there's going to be some challenges facing the Hurricanes. So I don't know if this was a team-friendly deal or not. I think you know,
It is, yeah, it is what it is, and the guy's getting his money, and he's improved. I mean, what's unfortunate, what I find unfortunate, is that I think he would have had more ice time in Montreal, especially with the injuries that have occurred. Obviously, he would have stayed at center. Right now, he's playing the wing. But happy for him. Happy he's got the money, and as you said, we move on as fans, but it's something that a lot of fans will be interested in knowing that. So 4.82 is wearing number 82, by the way, with the Carolina Hurricanes. Eric Engels from Sportsnet confirms that Jeff Petrie remains with the Canadiens for the time being. So Jeff Petrie has not been traded by trade deadline, which doesn't come as it's not unexpected. So
no,
there's other trades that might be coming in and trickling in there, Bob. We don't have any specifics yet, not about the Canadians anyway. We know that Derek Brassard is with the Oilers as well for a fourth
oh,
round
did he
pick.
sign? Okay, well,
Yeah, he
that's
was traded by the Flyers, so Derek is going to be with the Oilers as well. They needed a third line center,
yeah.
third or fourth line, so he'll be able to doing that. And also, a news worthy, I would say, is how the Leafs signed this goalie. I forget his name now.
Sateri.
Yes. Well,
Sateri.
he got claimed by the New Jersey Devils. So he got claimed off waivers. So and Mrazek cleared waivers. So the good news is they'll be able to keep Mrazek if they need him. But so they signed that goalie hoping to get some help in goal, and that's not going to happen. The Devils said
Oh,
no. And also, PK Subban is staying put,
I think
pending unrestricted free agent. I thought maybe someone would take a flyer, but even you can't keep more than half the cap, and even at $4.5 million, PK it's too much for a team.
it's too much. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's going to have to, take one of those $1 million contracts and reprove himself again if he wants to, or 2 million or whatever, but nothing close to what he's making. I don't know his reputation in some ways. I mean, he's been proven to be a great philanthropist, but in other areas, his reputation may have preceded him. That's going to hurt him in the marketplace too, I think.
So if you had to grade, let's say there's nothing else coming up. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything on my Twitter feed yet saying that the Canadians are done or not, actually. So we don't know if there are more deals trickling in as far as I know. I mean, I'm keeping track of what we're doing here and my Twitter account at the same time. But I haven't seen anything go through saying that the Canadians were done for today. If you had to grade the work of Kent Hughes so far, I mean, so we're looking at the Toffoli trade, we're looking at the Chara trade, we're looking at the Kulak trade, and we're looking at the Lehkonen trade. What is your take on the work that Kent Hughes has done so far?
Well, I would give him an A plus. I really like everything he's done. On the other side of the coin, he gave his trading partners things they were looking for. It wasn't that he went out and fleeced them. These teams had a need. He had a possible solution. So I think, all in all, if you look at his trades, I think they were good for both sides, but really good for Montreal. So that's kind of my thumbnail analysis of the whole thing.
Well, I think it's a pretty fair analysis. I mean, to me, I find difficult to give an A plus because I don't know prospects that well. And it's self-admittedly here. There's only so much I can focus on. I have a hard time, saying A plus for the time being until we find out a little bit what those prospects will develop like. Emil, I forget his last name now. That was in the
Heidemann.
Yes.
Yeah.
It remains to be seen how this guy develops. Picks are picks. I mean, you can judge the picks right away because obviously the first, second round pick has better odds of making the NHL. Down the line, you'll be able to do a better analysis, but we don't know where those picks will be exactly in each round, right? So, but as far as prospects are concerned, I mean, I know that Hughes speaks very highly of that young man. I mean, he's played against his sons, and he seems to know him quite well. He says he's a good skater, and he's got some goal scoring abilities. His numbers don't back that up yet, but who am I to go against what Kent Hughes says when he's seen them? So I wouldn't be pretentious to the point of trying to overwrite what he's saying.
Just
and
a,
also,
just a
yeah,
quick interruption here. Our former buddy Max Domi is heading to Carolina. Did you see that?
yeah, it's going to be joining Yes Perry
He will be.
on left wing. He's going to be fighting for a spot with him.
Yeah, that's yeah. There's teams that are and Pittsburgh picked up Ricardo Raquel from Anaheim. So some big names moving right at the deadline.
I want to share also a quote from Kyle Dubas, our good friend Kyle Dubas, the general manager. He's actually on TSN right now. Dubas talking about losing Sateri to waivers. He says, and I quote, "We've had 11 guys claimed, which I think is double what the other teams have had taken off waivers." So we feel sorry for you. Nah. Look at how many man games we've lost with the Canadians.
Oh, it's unbelievable the man games we've lost. But Dubas has been rolling the dice, and when you roll the dice, you're taking a chance. I mean, that Foligno trade last year, trying to sneak guys through waivers and fiddling with the cap space and LTIR.
Well, they spend all their money on 4 guys, right? So
Mhm.
I mean, you're top heavy, and I remember not long ago where you had Habs fans and even some members of the media talking about how the Leafs were building the right way. Well, I'm not so sure that the Canadians are not in a better position right now than the Leafs are. For the short term, okay, the Leafs are in good position. There's no doubt. But if you're talking about rebuilding or getting competitive again, the Leafs have spent a lot of their future already for playoff runs, and they haven't won a playoff series in 17 years, since 2004. And so I'm not so sure that they are the model to follow for a rebuild. I love what Bergevin started in 2018, and I think that's what Hughes and Gordon are doing right now. They're just continuing with that, but changing the going from a bruising team, a tough team,
Yeah.
to a more skilled and obviously more proactive coaching, right?
You said that Hughes is continuing what Bergevin started. I think I would agree with that in the sense that they were both very reluctant to give up draft choices and high-end prospects for
But
short-term.
also keeping their picks.
Yep.
I'm talking about since 2018.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
not Bergevin before that. I'm talking
Yeah.
the reset.
Yeah. Exactly. So they both held on to their picks and added to their picks, and they didn't give up any high-end prospects and trades for short-term fixes. Having said that, their vision for the ideal NHL team is different. Like you said, Bergevin likes the big, bruising type of hockey, and Hughes seems to be the faster paced, more dynamic hockey. But again, the overall philosophy was the same. So I'm glad to see that happening. You always have to keep one eye on the future in the NHL as far as I'm concerned. Hopefully,
Yeah,
this is something long term.
Yeah, we have a live look here of the War Room, actually, in Toronto. Let's see if I can show that. There you go. There's the War Room in Toronto. It's all Leafs on Sportsnet and TSN. Okay, I mean, even before even before the trade started getting announced, I mean, they were talking about Austin Matthews. What does it have to do with trade deadline? I don't know, but you know, that's the Toronto media's for you.
TSN has driven me to Twitter. Uh, I, I mean, I get more information from Twitter now than I do from TSN because it's just been, it's just over the top. Some of this stuff. So,
Yeah, although I do like their broadcast better than Sportsnet, I have to say,
I
especially
do too.
color commentating. I think they're a little bit more neutral, especially the teams covering the. And I mean, you look at the Jets coverage also on TSN, it's great, or even on Sportsnet. Actually, it's quite good. You look at other teams' coverage when the Canadians play them, and if you listen to it on the broadcasts from their home coverage, it's actually quite good. But once you get to the national coverage and you get with the Gary Galley and you get with the Healy and once you get to those guys, I mean it's so biased against the Canadian. It's not even funny. It makes it unappealing to even watch the hockey game. Last game I watched it on mute. Glenn Millen actually was the.
Well, sometimes they just have nothing to add. Just you might as well watch it.
So that everyone knows, actually, it is 3:21 p.m. Eastern right now, 12:21 our time here in BC. Kent Hughes will be speaking to the media in 9 minutes at 12:30 our time Pacific, so 3:30 Pacific Eastern time. We will start wrapping this up, Bob, because we'll give everyone a chance to. I'm guessing that if Kent Hughes is meeting the media so soon, there's probably no other announcements coming from the Canadians at this point. And so I have to say, I'd like to know from what you know, because we haven't had time to explore all the moves that have been happening. There's been tons of moves. Go check them out. But we did cover the ones for the Canadians at the very least. Our team, the one that we like following and cheering the logo. So I'd like to get your take on who came up on top at this trade deadline, in your opinion. First of all, with teams in the playoffs and teams outside the playoffs.
Okay, that's
putting you on the spot here.
I really like what Florida has done. I think they've really beefed up in areas where they needed to beef up. The Ekblad injury is going to make it hard to evaluate how much those trades improved them, because it was kind of 2 steps forward and 1 step back, losing Ekblad for the rest of the regular season. I think Tampa, kind of under the radar with Brandon Hagel. He gives them. They regained what they lost from their Stanley Cup winning team of last year, and and then when I look at maybe Carolina didn't do a lot, but when you look at teams like that, that Eastern Division is going to be one tough division to come out of. So
yeah,
I think.
Seems like the East has done more. I don't know. I could be wrong, but it seems like the East has done a lot more.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh is a team that surprised me. They're an old team, but they're right in the hunt. And picking up that Richard Burkell at the deadline, we combined him with Malcolm coming back after missing the first half of the year. Letang and Crosby and some pretty solid goaltending. A lot of their moves were kind of under the radar, but again, another surprising team. So as far as the contenders go in the East, I would say Florida is a team that came out on top as far as short-term goes.
And that's who I was going to say. Also, they added Charrot, they added Robin Hagg too. Let's not forget Claude Giroux. This is pretty substantial. Yes, they've lost Ekblad but Ekblad will pull a Kucherov, right? He'll be back for the playoffs. So until the NHL fixes that loophole and imposes the salary cap maximum for the playoffs as well, then you'll have teams that will be playing around the rules, and and the injuries are legitimate. Don't get me wrong; I'm not questioning the injuries, but it's the loophole, the timing of losing a good player that makes a lot of money, allowing you prior to trade deadline to add that salary. And then in the playoff, once you get to the playoffs, then hell breaks loose. Where the Tampa Bay Lightning were 18 million over the cap facing the Canadiens there. It does create an unfair advantage. Let's face it, especially for teams that are quite strong. I do like what the Canadiens have done. I am excited, looking forward to seeing what else they can do. Allow me to share a little something here. It's actually coming from Marley Hammond, the wife of the Hamburglar, Andrew Hammond, and she basically is saying that what a season this has been for us. I don't think anyone will ever understand how much Andrew playing for Montreal meant to us. Those were some of my favorite games ever to watch. I'm sad I never got to meet Yuppie, but Montreal and those games were so fun. Oh, and Montreal fans, thank you for the warmest welcome ever to Andrew. That was the best part. Incredible fan base. This is from Marley Hammond, the spouse, the wife of Andrew Hammond. Pretty amazing testimony here.
When I see comments like hers, I see comments made by Kat DeFoley, and I see comments made by Ben Sherratt. All of a sudden, Montreal might seem like an appealing place for some of those, I wouldn't say maybe top end free agents, but some of those mid tier free agents who wanted to be treated right, want to be treated right, who want to play in front of a passionate fan base, and just get in the excitement of playing hockey in hockey's mecca, Montreal.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Bob. So listen, remind people how they can follow you on Twitter.
It is at RW Trask is my Twitter handle. And every once in a while, JD will post something that I've written on cheeringthelogo.ca.
Exactly, and I was going to follow up with that actually. If you would like to read Bob's most recent articles here, go to cheeringthelogo.ca, and in the right hand column, if you scroll down, you will see our writers are there and all their latest work. So if you click on his name, on Bob's name there, you'll see all the articles that Bob has written for us. A very good article. Bob is the type who a little bit like me, likes to research his stuff, and he's trying to cut it back a little bit, because sometimes we have so much we're trying to do, so much we're trying to say in one article, and when you make it pay attention to details like he does. Very good article, very well followed as well. A good fan base. Bob has been a little bit busy lately with his with following what's going on around the world, and I don't blame him one second. It's horrible what's going on right now. He will be back writing with us though in no time, I'm sure. Well, even if it's short articles, we really appreciate your work with us, Bob, and tune in for the next time as well. So with that being said, thank you for joining us again today, Bob. It's been a pleasure, first of all, meeting you in person like this, or virtually in person, and also how did you feel about the first experience?
It was smoother than I expected, to tell you the truth. You're a great host and moderator, and made it pretty easy for me. So thanks, Judy.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we will have go to cheeringthelogo.ca also for YouTube. Those who are watching on YouTube right now, please subscribe. Hit the subscribe button here. This way, you will know the next time that we have a new podcast. We will have more coming up. It will give you a heads up actually when the podcasts are coming. And follow us at cheeringthelogo.ca. A commercial. Cheeringthelogo.ca on Twitter, and our Facebook page at the same name. Subscribe, and the more people follow the show. We will have some good guests coming in also and joining us, and we try to make it interactive as well. We saw some comments that we've shown. We might invite some of our fans as well on the show for futures. So thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you. I would say hopefully no more than a week. Okay, thank you everyone.
JD.